Hello and welcome to the Fuel Run Recover podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, registered dietitian, running coach, marathon runner, and mom. This season, we're breaking down running's biggest trends, hot topics, and myths, and turning them into practical nutrition and training advice you can actually use every day. Let's get into it. Hey runners, before we get into today's episode, I want to ask you a quick question. Have you ever wondered if your nutrition is actually helping your running, or is it actually holding you back? If you want to find out, I've created a brand new free resource just for you. It's called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a super quick checklist that's going to help you spot the signs of underfueling, low energy availability, or where the gaps in your nutrition might be that are impacting your recovery and actually slowing you down. It only takes a few minutes to go through, and by the end, you're going to know whether or not your fueling is on the right track, or if you really need to start making some changes to the way you approach your eating so you can start to feel stronger on every run, reduce your injury risk, and actually get the results that you're training so hard for. You can grab your free copy right now by clicking on the link in the show notes. Again, this is called the Runner's Fueling Audit. It's a free downloadable resource, and it's going to give you so much clarity on how you can start feeling smarter and running stronger. All right, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fuel Run Recover podcast, where today I am taking you behind the scenes of what it's really like to work with a sport dietitian and running coach. So what is it really like myself? What is the process that I go through with my clients? And I want to tell you a little bit about some of the people that I've been working with recently and the types of things that we've been working on together. And I wanted to record this episode because I see it a lot where people are maybe feeling a little bit intimidated around hiring a coach. I think especially a little bit intimidated around hiring a dietitian and working with someone like me. There's sort of this fear of like, what is she going to make me do? What favorite foods of mine am I going to have to like give up? What is she going to take away? How much shaming or guilt or like stuff like that is going to come my way? And while people want to eat better and people want to learn how to fuel for their training and that sort of thing, I think the kind of mindset or sort of the thought process is that this is going to be a very strict process and there's going to be a lot of things that we have to give up, and ultimately you're going to be very hungry throughout this process of working with me. And I just feel like a lot of those fears or uncertainties just come from diet culture, right? I mean, everything comes from diet culture in our world today. Everything is sort of dictated by our history of diet culture. And where we're at now with, weight loss diet culture and sort of that rise again of losing weight and being thin and sort of pushing all of that, I think it's just kind of thrown everything up in the air all over again. And for all of us who lived through the 90s and early 2000s, and now we're back here again, a lot of people already have a history of working with a coach, maybe a nutrition coach or a weight loss coach, or working with a trainer, doing online programs, diets, all the MLM stuff that circulated around. I don't know if a lot of that is as popular anymore, but no, this is no one's first rodeo, right? I to this, like this, at this point in my career to this day, I do not meet a lot of people who have had no experience with trying to eat better, going on a diet, doing some kind of nutrition program, weight loss, whatever that might be, right? So a lot of people are coming in already with some like lived experience around this stuff. And while working with myself, like working with a sport dietitian is quite different than what a lot of those programs are even meant for or made for, that doesn't mean that there isn't still, a little bit of past trauma from having to give up all your favorite foods or eat like teeny tiny little portions. So, when we're looking at that, we have to make a lot of sacrifice. We have to make a lot of really big sweeping changes to our eating. We maybe have to eat super different than the rest of our family. Like now for myself, being a parent, having to cook meals for two young kids, I would not want to embark on any kind of nutrition program that requires me to eat this over here while like the rest of my family's eating that, right? I'm not about making two meals. So as we know, these types of changes, these sort of short-term changes don't really last. And a lot of people think that like working with a dietitian must be like all of that, but on steroids. You're leveling up to like the ultimate boss in healthy eating. So this has got to be just even like you don't even know how crazy this is going to be. You don't even know what's going to happen. And it's going to be like anything that you've done before, or maybe even more strict than what you've done before. But there's going to be a lot of like guilt or food shaming or finger wagging or like, people will not even want to tell me what they eat sometimes because they think that like, oh, it's so bad, or, they don't want to admit to me that they like pasta sort of thing. And I'm just like, that's not the vibe around here. And if you've been a listener to the podcast for a while, like, that we appreciate carbs to their fullest here. We believe that all foods can fit. I personally incorporate that type of mentality into my eating. This is not something that I just tell other people and then like don't follow. I am very big on kind of practicing what I preach, and that goes into, food flexibility and enjoying all of the things. Obviously, most of our choices should be nutritious. We should eat our fruits and veggies and home cooked meals and get in our lean proteins and that kind of stuff, but not at the complete sacrifice or exclusion of fun foods and flexibility. So, like for me, I like to have a little bit of dessert almost every single day. Now, there's some people out there who don't want to do that, and that's fine. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to. But I'm here to tell you that if you want to be part of a community or work with someone who is okay with having a little bit of dessert every day, then this is where it's at. Anyway, so that's why today I want to kind of peel back the curtain on my process of working with people, what I do, what the sessions look like, kind of how it all unfolds week by week. So that you really get an understanding of like, how do I work with people? What's maybe different about how I do this compared to what you might have done before? And also just talk about some examples of some of the different things, some of the different challenges or issues that I help people with in just a regular week of my life as a sport dietitian and running coach. So when I start working with a new client, so when I'm onboarding a new client, we'll start with an initial assessment. And so this is typically a longer appointment where we talk about their goals, obviously, talk about what they want to achieve or accomplish while they're working with me, kind of long-term and short-term. I also always like to identify what are that individual's biggest concerns, biggest priorities, right? So sometimes when I'm hearing someone, talking to someone, listening to what they want to work on, I might have a little bit of a list of like a couple things that I'm like, okay, well, this I'd like to work on, or this is kind of a red flag for me. Here's some things that I think are probably not working well or not really helping you reach your goals. But if the client says, I want like these are the things that are bothering me the most. Well, we're obviously going to start with what the client wants to start with and talk about their biggest concerns or their biggest priorities first, right? My stuff can wait. Or sometimes it all really lines up nicely, and then we can have a conversation about all of that together. But I just want to get in that first initial assessment, I just want to get a lay of the land, right? Training schedule. What are you doing day by day? Walk me through Monday. What do you do? Tuesday. What do you do? Wednesday. What do you do for your training? What races maybe do you have coming up on your calendar, if anything? And also understanding typical eating patterns and meal timing. So when throughout the day do you do your workouts, and what do you eat throughout the day, right? Are we doing a fasted training situation? Are we struggling with gut issues? And so we're training fasted because our stomach is a mess. And do we need to maybe work on some gut training so we can eat properly to fuel the demands of our training? Are we under fueling around our workouts and then we're starving for the rest of the day and not eating very well as a result? Are we running into injury issues, or just getting a lay of the land? What's going on? What are the challenges and what are the barriers? And so then from there, the second step is to start to carve out a little bit of a plan. And sometimes that plan starts with a little bit of data collection. So maybe looking at tracking food journaling, taking pictures. There's no one perfect way or necessary way to look at or to track somebody's intake, right? Some people like the numbers and the data, and they want to measure things and they want to put everything in as detailed as possible and get like a really detailed analysis out of all the tracking that they're doing. That's great, right? That is something that I can do. That is something that I can offer. And I am very happy to do a very detailed dietary analysis and give feedback on what a person is eating. But for other people, the idea of tracking their food makes them want to vomit. And so we might do like some sort of more general food journaling, like just write it down, pen and paper, or take photos of our meals, right? Taking photos of what you eat is a great way to still kind of keep track, but in a lower pressure sort of way. And I can tell a lot from a photo of someone's meals, right? Meal timing, portion sizes, proportions of food on the plate, how many times a day a person is eating. Like you can get a ton of really good, valuable information just from taking photos. So sometimes too, that might be a little bit of a misconception that like if you're working with someone like myself, you're going to have to do all of this like work to like track. And while, yes, I will sometimes get people to track, ask them to track even just for a couple of days, it is by no means a requirement in order to be successful. But we want to get a baseline of things, right? We want to just see what we're working with, get a lay of the land, figure out where we need to make changes, right? And so we do a little bit of data collection, do that as part of an assessment. And then, of course, we follow up. And so maybe we're following up and doing that really detailed analysis. You know, we're pulling up the spreadsheet and we're looking at the numbers and kind of seeing averages and all of that, looking for those gaps. Or maybe we're looking more around like the timing, the portions, the proportions, the frequency, and the overall balance of things if we're looking at it from like a journaling or a photo perspective, right? But again, we're just looking at where are the gaps and then what's our strategy to fix or to fill those gaps. Maybe it's a little bit of education, right? Sometimes people just need a little bit of knowledge around what to eat when. You know, they just need someone to sit down and tell them like, hey, your workout is at this time of day, so you should be eating this at this time and this at that time. And here's some meal ideas or some recipes or some simple things that you can eat or make in those times to get where you want to go. Maybe it is around gut training. And maybe part of the reason that we're not eating properly is because our stomach gives us so many issues. And so we need to talk about how do we slowly build up? How do we slowly train our gut to tolerate what we need to take in order to have successful training runs and successful races? Or maybe it's time management, right? Like, how can I batch cook a little bit more? What are some things that I can like prep or make ahead? How do I incorporate meal planning and like what are the steps to planning my meals ahead of time? And really some of those like tangible resources and kind of practical advice around how do I set myself up to be able to eat the way that I need to reach my goals. Because the reality is like this stuff doesn't just happen, right? Like despite our knowledge and despite knowing what we should eat when, that in and of itself does not put a healthy meal on the table. Like knowing that we should have this, and this in these proportions does not mean that that meal has been cooked and the groceries have been bought and the time to cook the meal has been carved out, right? Like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of steps that have to happen in order for a healthy, balanced meal to be put down in front of us. Now, if you're a multimillionaire and you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, well, Steph, I just have my private chef make all of my meals. Well, that is wonderful. And I'm very happy for you and your private chef. But for the majority of people, right, for all the rest of us out here, we have to plan and shop and cook and, you know, all of that goes along with it. There are parts of that can be outsourced, right? There are tools that can help us meal plan. There are tools and ways to reduce our time that needs to be spent at the grocery store. We can do delivery. We can do meal services that provide us with things. But like, again, so much of what I do in working with people is figuring out like, where do we have like time to cook and we just need to plan and execute? Or do we not have time and we got to figure out another option, right? How do we make the nutrition plan come to life in a way that is not a massive burden on your time or your energy or like what's practical and reasonable for you. So for example, and this is not a one size fits all thing. And I think that's what's so important to remember about this process is that you cannot be successful with a cookie cutter plan. Because if you have a plan where you need to make all of your homemade meals, right? There are no processed foods, no prepackaged foods, like no nothing is allowed. You have to cook all your meals from scratch. But like you've got kids that are in activities and, or maybe you're training for a Ironman and you've got a couple of workouts to do that day. Like you home cooking every single thing from scratch may not be feasible or realistic. You just don't have the hours in the day. And so we need to like make a plan and have a strategy that allows for that, So maybe there are some convenience foods or some, I'll call them packaged foods, but like, again, maybe meal delivery kits or services or things like that. There's so many options these days. It's wonderful living in 2026 for that reason. But like just figuring out how do we translate the knowledge around what should we eat, what do we want to be eating when, into actual behavior change. And it's not always just the practical stuff, right? Like it's not always just having a solution of, oh, I didn't know that I could order these salads online and get these beautiful balanced salads for lunches delivered to my door. Or I didn't know that I could use this online tool to plan my meals and it would give me ideas in just a couple of minutes a day kind of thing. People sometimes also have trouble implementing or executing a nutrition plan because of mindset barriers, right? Barriers that have more to do with our relationship with food and exercise and our weight and diet culture and all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of people, I think, are very surprised by this part of it too. Like I get told all the time that I'm basically like a therapist. I am not a therapist. I want to make that really clear. I am not a mental health expert. I am not trained in the skills and the strategies and the things that people do when they're working with someone specifically on their mental health. So if you're looking for a therapist, I am not a therapist, but I can be sort of adjacent to that in that a lot of the reason that we have trouble with sustainability or we have trouble making changes, we have trouble with that. Again, it's not knowledge, but it's our relationship with food and exercise and diet culture and some of these beliefs around ourselves, beliefs around our weight, beliefs around our identity as a runner or as a person, whatever aspect of ourselves we're talking about, these beliefs that are so ingrained that it isn't as easy as just saying, oh, well, you just need to eat more carbs, right? Because yeah, I know, but that's hard because I'm afraid that if I eat more carbs, I'm going to see unwanted changes in my weight or body composition. And I'm afraid of what that might look like or what that might mean for me, right? It's not as straightforward as, oh, my dietitian says I need, 300 or 400 grams of carbs a day, so I'm just going to do it. And I want to really make sure that that aspect of this whole process like gets the appreciation and sort of the weight that it deserves, because that is so much more often the issue than just a simple lack of like not knowing how many grams of protein you need a day. I think that's good information and people sometimes do need those numbers, but more often it's a matter of like, why are we having trouble actually implementing and executing? Sometimes it's practical, but sometimes it's more mindset. And so I want to be there to help you figure out what is it, right? What is the problem? And then again, like, how do we make sure that we can fix it? And the thing is, I've been doing this for a long time. I've been a dietitian for almost 15 years now. And I always expect that there's going to be barriers and challenges to making changes. So it might come as a surprise to my clients when there's barriers and challenges, and just simply knowing what to eat does not always directly translate into making the changes sustainably. I know that there's going to be problems that come up along the way, and we want to anticipate that and plan for that. And I think most importantly, not give up and give up on ourselves when the going gets tough. And this happens so often where we think that we just simply need a plan to follow. And if we have the plan, we just have to follow the plan and it will all be all good. We will reach our goals and that's it. We just need the right plan. But at the end, and so then when inevitably we have a day or a weekend or a situation when we don't perfectly follow the plan, then we give up entirely. Or maybe it's been a couple of weeks and we haven't lost any weight yet. And we think, well, this plan isn't working, right? So I'm going to give up because obviously I haven't lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. So this can't be the thing. This doesn't work. And that's just not the case. That is not the truth, right? We need to have that flexibility. We need to have a plan that isn't so strict and so rigid that we can't have a little bit of fun here and there or have a little bit of flexibility and still know that long term we're going to reach the goal that we're working towards, right? The clients who I work with that succeed and reach all of their goals just by simply following the plan that I make for them and just like having a meal plan and following it and like that's it. I mean, those people are few and far between. I'm not saying they don't exist. Like they're out there and you guys are great and you make my life so easy. If all you just need to be told is how many grams of protein to eat, you're just gonna like go eat it and that's the end. I mean, bless you. But that's not normal, right? Because for a lot of people, it's a little bit more help, a little bit more um addressing those barriers, addressing those ups and downs. And again, really being able to dig into our relationship with food and our relationship with exercise and ourselves in that way. So I want to give you a couple of examples. Some of the clients that I've been working with lately, and what we've been working on, what the struggles or what the challenges have been, why they wanted to start working with somebody, and then kind of where we're going from here. So all of these clients are people that I'm still working with, so they're not done their work with me. I've had some clients that I've been working with for so many years at this point. I don't know if we'll ever be done working together, which is great. But this first client is actually someone who's in my online group program, the Fuel Train Recover Club. She joined a little over a year ago now. She's a lifelong runner, has always been a runner since childhood, essentially. But she had joined the Fuel Train Recover Club, newly back to running postpartum, and was just kind of like getting her footing again, sort of struggling with enjoying the process of running, enjoying getting back into a regular routine of running, having running feel good again, and getting comfortable with just all the changes that come with being postpartum, like after having kids. So are really looking at like meal timing, getting enough nutrition to support the demands of her training and also nursing, looking at the portions with the athlete's plates, and really just wanting the training quality to be strong. So like when you show up for a workout, you're not dragging, you're not exhausted, you're not low in energy, right? Let's not make the workouts harder than they need to be, right? Let's not add more stress to your life, to your body than is necessary. Let's really focus on a fueling strategy that makes you feel as good as possible getting out for those workouts. And so the workouts, of course, started slow, started small. It was just those consistent easy miles. And for a really long time, it's just been consistent easy miles. But every so often, adding in a little bit of speed workouts, adding in some different types of speed workouts. So working on like shorter, faster intervals, longer intervals, right? Getting in some tempo runs, upping volume a little bit here and there, kind of as much as you can when you're working and have kids and you've got limited time to train, and just really being consistent. And I mean, her consistency has been fabulous, like so good, right? And so just like keeping it overall consistent, but what people often don't think about is that that consistency is building fitness week by week, right? Rebuilding that aerobic base, rebuilding that fitness, rebuilding that strength. And then now, within the last couple of months, she's felt ready to actually start signing up for races again. So she signed up for a fall race, and now we're able to kind of lock in on more of those race specific workouts, right? Like kind of setting up the next training block for her to really, focus on that race that she has and focus on that goal race time that she has. And so like the center of this work has been just really getting back that love of running, really focusing on the enjoyment of getting out there, having that solo time to do those workouts and having those workouts feel as good as possible, because that's what breeds sustainability. That's what breeds consistency. And those are the things that breed results. And so it's been like really amazing to see, really amazing to be working with this runner. And I can't wait to see how this race in the fall for it goes. I think it's going to be amazing. So the second client that I want to talk about is a triathlete. He's training for an Ironman this fall, and we've also been working together for almost a year at this point. He had reached out when he knew he wanted to do this specific Ironman race because he really wanted to spend a good amount of time developing and working on that nutrition plan. So not just for race day, but for the ongoing training and for the demands of training for an Ironman. And I think this is so important. And I wanted to talk about this because I find a lot of people wait until they're just a few weeks out from their race, or even until they like have a race on the calendar, right? Like the race is 10, 12, 14 weeks away to start thinking about nutrition. And a lot of times, especially for a massive event like an Ironman, that's too late. Like, yeah, you can put something together, right? Like I'm not going to turn someone away and tell them that I can't help them if it is getting a little bit close to their event. But you have so much more opportunity to optimize things, so much more opportunity to have a better, stronger training cycle, to get more from your training that you're doing, which ultimately leads to a stronger race day if you start thinking about this stuff early. So when you know you want to do a certain event, especially again, these ultra endurance events, Ironmans or ultra races, things like that, that take a tremendous amount of time to train and prep for, you want to start the process of thinking about your nutrition on day one, right? Because the better you fuel during training, the better your training goes, the better your recovery, reduce risk for injuries. And then once you get to race day, you're very confident and very solid in your fueling plan. So this client of mine has had, I'm going to say, I think he's done 3 other races, half marathon or longer in the time, like in this almost year that we've been working together. So it's having a race, a strategy for like carb loading and intra-race fueling and all of that kind of stuff for each of these races along the way, building up to this Ironman. So nothing that we're doing for the Ironman is new, right? All of these things are strategies that he has practiced many, many times. Everything has been done before. We know that it works. We know that it's successful. So this most recent appointment that I had with this client was to follow up on a marathon he had recently run. So we ran a full marathon a couple weeks ago, and we reviewed his race week plan. So like what he did for carb loading and what he did for intra-race fueling and hydration and kind of all the things, just sort of debriefing what he did, how it went, how he felt. He had a fabulous marathon that day. So he was really happy with his results from the marathon, but also, his race nutrition plan. So since we've now, executed that plan a couple of times, we know that it's a good plan for him and we know that it works. So we can kind of keep all of that pretty much the same for the upcoming Ironman. He's traveling for this race, so there'll be some small modifications, here and there because of the travel. But the other thing we did was we looked at his upcoming training calendar, for these next couple of months leading up to when he leaves for his race, and also adjusted his daily nutrition targets. And so it's not always just about the event or just about like fueling for the event itself, but also, again, making sure that every workout is as strong as possible as we get into this peak volume season he's heading into, right? So feedback on how he's feeling, energy levels, hunger, recovery, workout quality, right? All of those things. And what we decided was that we probably needed to add in some more calories and up his calories as he kind of heads into these next couple months of training. And so having that ongoing sort of touch point to check in, how are things going? How's the training going? How are you feeling? Okay, let's make some shifts to the plan, just means that, again, as your volume builds, as the demands of your training grow, you're not still following a nutrition plan that's from like 6 months ago, right? That's going to leave you underfueled, maybe getting injuries, just not feeling and training your best. And that's, just such a great part of having this ongoing process. So the last client that I want to tell you about today is a newer client. So she is someone that we've had just a couple of appointments together so far. She is, like so many of us, busy working mom, wants to improve her speed, endurance, and body composition. So again, some really common goals and some really common things that I work with my clients, people who, want to get faster, want to get stronger, want to enjoy running more, and want to see that reflected in their body composition and see some changes there too. And so in our first couple of sessions with this client, we addressed a very common issue that I see with tons of runners, right? Which is generally under fueling and sort of having intake that's all over the place. So like some days are really low calorie, some days are really high calorie, and just like not having it match up necessarily to training demands. Like it's just kind of all over the map. And also not timing meals properly around workout demands. So this is an athlete whose workouts are earlier in the day. Meals earlier in the day are very healthy, but very low carb, right? So very focused on protein and veggies, and that is wonderful. I will never say a bad word about protein and veggies, but ultimately too low in carbs, given that that's the time of day that she's most active. So then, surprise, surprise, we're super hungry in the afternoon and evenings, and there's just this disconnect between when we need the calories and when we're eating the calories, and they're not lining up. And being really hungry later in the day is also leading to us not making the most nutritious choices during that time. And a lot of people think or have been led to believe from other diets that they've done, other people's opinions, whoever, again, like working with other people on nutrition. And you hear a lot about willpower and discipline. You just need to stop snacking, cut that stuff out, make better choices, on and on and on. And like I said, a lot of people are surprised to find that like this here is a no guilt, no shame, no finger wagging environment. And what I know is that willpower and discipline and just telling yourself to be better does not work. It doesn't work, right? Unfortunately, it just creates a situation where we have no willpower when we do eat those foods. So like we can strong arm ourselves, not have it in the house, cannot be exposed, can't go to social events, can't do anything if there's going to be food around because we're going to overdo it. And what I want for people instead is to live in a world, live in an environment where you can have a couple of chips out of a bag or out of a bowl and move on with your life. You can go to a social event and you can have a cookie or a cupcake or like whatever you want, and it's okay. It doesn't lead to a massive binge. It doesn't lead to feeling totally out of control, eating until you're sick or guilty or whatever that might be, right? And it's generally not about the amount of food we actually eat in those situations. It's how we feel about eating those foods. Cupcakes are wonderful and cupcakes are delicious. And unless you are very unlucky and you get a bad cupcake, which like, I'm sure it's possible that you could have a bad cupcake, but like, I don't know. I've never had a bad cupcake unless it is just inherently a bad cupcake. Eating a cupcake should never be a bad thing, right? Like I never want you to eat a cupcake and then have negative feelings about the cupcake. I want you to eat the cupcake and enjoy the cupcake. Now, of course, we typically don't need to eat 10 cupcakes, and that's where the problem is. So it's not about like none and cutting it out and like even one is too much. It's just about finding that balance. And that balance comes from fueling ourselves well throughout the day, right? It's not about cutting back. It's not about trimming calories. It's not about eating less and moving more. It's shifting our eating to more calories earlier in the day, getting in more carbs around the time that we're most active when we need it, because that is what naturally improves our hunger and our fullness cues and our appetite regulation for the rest of the day. So now, instead of dragging through workouts, having no endurance, struggling through getting in these miles, this client now with this shift feels stronger, has better quality workouts, is actually seeing the progress in her endurance and her fitness, and not having those same ravenous hunger issues, that same level of snacking that she was doing later in the day, right? The key though with this approach is that we need patience and we need to trust the process, right? Body composition changes take time. This is very different than those quick fix kind of like weight loss types of diets where it's, just eat these 4 things and you're going to drop 10 pounds in 2 weeks, right? The magazine covers and the social media before and after and all this kind of stuff, right? If it shows someone losing a huge amount of weight over like a couple of weeks, that's not real, right? I mean, it could just these days be not real because the internet. But also, if you drop 10 pounds in a couple of days, that is not body fat. That is depleting your muscle glycogen stores and the water that goes along with it. And this is why people find that like, oh, if I eat carbs, I immediately gain a bunch of weight. It's not weight. That's just muscle glycogen and water, right? That's the weight you're supposed to be. The depleted, no muscle glycogen, no water weight. That's not your real weight. That's not, body fat changes don't take place that quickly, right? Body fat changes take place over months and years, not weeks. And so if we can shift our expectations around this stuff, then the consistency and the sustainability needs to be baked into the plan. And I don't mean this like militant level of consistency or rigidity where we can't ever eat a cupcake, because, I don't want to live a life where I cannot ever have ice cream again, right? I don't care how thin I am promised to be. I don't want to live in a world where I don't get to sometimes have ice cream. And that means that the plan has to be somewhat, like it has to be flexible, right? Am I eating ice cream for breakfast? No. Especially not on a daily, but no, I probably never have had ice cream for breakfast. I don't think I've ever had ice cream. Lunch on a hot day at the beach? Sure. But breakfast, I don't think so. Anyway, that's not the point. The point is, you have to have some flexibility and some variety built into it if it's going to be something you're going to follow for months and years, right? If it's a short-term quick fix, we can make a lot of sacrifice short-term, but that's not going to get us the result we're looking for. And it actually can do the opposite, where over time we're actually seeing weight gain and we're actually putting ourselves in a worse position, right? So that's just a very small sample of the clients that I work with and have been working with. I hope that by listening to this episode, you kind of get a sense of what it's really like to work with a sport dietitian. And kind of all the different kinds of things that we do, and all the different kinds of runners that I see. There is often a lot of overlap in the struggles around fueling. My athletes come from all walks of life, ages, experience, races, events that they're doing. There's a lot of variety in some of that, but a lot of times it comes down to wanting to have a deeper understanding of what you need to fuel your body, what to eat when, and then of course addressing some of those barriers that come up along the way. So if you see yourself reflected in any of the clients that I mentioned today, or if some of the things that I do sound like some of the things that you would like some help with, I do have lots of different ways that we can work together. You can check out my one-on-one coaching programs, or of course, I have my online programs, nutrition and running, and you can find all the information about all of that at the link in the show notes. All right, that is it for this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you back here next week. Bye for now. Podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client-practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.